in that Secretary of State Marco Rubio has been directly in touch with El Salvador's President Bukele over the man who was mistakenly deported from the U.S. to there. One official tells CNN the White House has privately asked for Camar Abrego Garcia's return to the United States, despite what the president and his own officials have said publicly. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us.
Would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador.
Now, we are told lately that President Bukele has made clear that he has no intention of returning Abrego Garcia to the United States, citing what happened in the Oval Office meeting that you just saw. Asked about this reporting today during the cabinet meeting, Secretary Rubio declined to confirm his conversations with Bukele, but said this.
Well, I would never tell you that. And you know who else I'll never tell? A judge. Because the conduct of our foreign policy belongs to the President of the United States and the executive branch, not some judge. So we will conduct foreign policy appropriately if we need to. But I'll never discuss it. And no one will ever make us discuss it because that's how foreign policy works.
My source tonight is Rena Gandhi, one of the attorneys representing Camar Abrego Garcia, also a partner at the immigration law firm Murray Osorio, and it's great to have you here. Have you been told by the White House about any effort or any conversations with President Bukele to get your client back?
It's interesting that as this case develops, so much comes out in the media, and yet, in our courts, we're still pushing forward towards discovery. I can't speak of what we've learned in discovery. However, Senator Rubio making these public statements is quite interesting.
You can't say what you learned in discovery, but can you tell us whether you have learned new information as a part of this process?
So the process was stayed until just very recently today, and we do have more time to do depositions and receive information and documentation.
Okay, so you're still hopeful that you could get more information, essentially.
Well, part of this process is to understand who said what to who, where he is necessarily, and what has been done. So yes, I do believe that given the judge's denial of the continued stay, the intention is to get more information.
Do these reported discussions that you clearly are saying you've learned about in the media between the U.S. and El Salvador about your client and getting him returned, does it give you hope that he ultimately will be returned to the United States?
I believe in the process. I believe in our court system, and absolutely, I have to believe that he is coming home.
In an interview that President Trump did last night, he was asked about allegations that your client has tattoos that are essentially MS-13 on his knuckles. I want to show you the photo. We've seen the photo that the president had. Essentially translates that they say that they would stand for MS-13. But listen to what the president had to say about this last night.
You don't pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute.
Well, wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattoo.
He had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Terry.
He did not have the
Don't do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
Yeah, that was Photoshop. So let me
That was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry. Hey, but you're not being very nice.
What do those tattoos show to you?
Not much. Not much at all. We have yet to speak to our client to get his side of why he was motivated to get certain symbols. Gang experts have weighed in all across the news and media and have not stated or not found these to be, regular, common, known symbols for gangs. We have no idea. And the government has never made this accusation before in a court of law.
Can I ask you about something else that they have alleged, though, and publicly, is the Department of Homeland Security revealed this. They say that His wife filed a petition for protection against him in August of 2020, alleging that he physically abused her, including slapping her and locking her in a bedroom. They say that this proves he has a track record of violence. What is your response to that?
Bring him back here, present this in a court of law, make your case. Let a judge decide, look at the actual evidence, hear from him, and we can move forward from there. But until he's back, none of this matters. We're distracting from the point, which is that he was removed against a court order that prevented him from being removed to the very country they removed him to, and a court has ordered his return to the United States.
Rena Gandhi, thank you for your time tonight. Also joining me here is my deeply sourced White House insider, Zolan Cano-Youngs of the New York Times, who with his colleagues wrote a fantastic story today about concerns that El Salvador's president had about who the United States was actually sending there.
That's right. So throughout this process, the White House has maintained that and justified these deportations to El Salvador by saying that the more than 200 Venezuelans were all gang members, that they were all hardened criminals. Our reporting showed that not only were immigration attorneys and relatives in the region concerned that these folks were wrongly imprisoned, but shortly after the people arrived in this prison and were locked away, that the president of El Salvador himself, the person who had agreed to jail these immigrants, that he also was questioning whether the administration had actually sent him convicted criminals, had actually sent him members of Tren de Aragua. That's according to people familiar with the matter and government documents that we've obtained as well.
And he actually pressed the White House on this, which you report set off a kind of a scramble inside the West Wing.
After the fact, right? After these folks were already imprisoned, you then have a U.S. official, a senior U.S. official, telling his peers the matter is urgent, that we actually need to send information to El Salvador after the fact, showing that each of these folks are members of Tren de Aragua. They did send government documents. The State Department tells us they sent a scorecard that basically assesses tattoos and clothing, and based off of that point system, asserts that somebody is a gang member. It seems that they did satisfy Bukele because he's continued to be a partner of President Trump, to be fair. But this all shows really the haphazard nature of this process and what seems to be the little regard the administration had before sending these people to this prison for ensuring that each of these folks were gang members.
Yeah, even by the president of El Salvador
That's
himself.
right.
Zolan, excellent story. You can read it at thenewyorktimes.com. Thank you for sharing that with us. Up next, it's a